Yeah, all the truth. What do you want to know?
So,
All the truth. What do you want to know?
so
Well, M.A. Larson a year ago told us his plan to take over the world, so what part do you play in that?
Well, I don't play a part in it anymore at all because I've just found out on Twitter today that he's going to play my part next season. So I guess that's my role done.
Recasting Larson as Princess Big Mac?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what he plans to sound like.
It's also going to be M.A. Big Mac.
He's just gonna smile and wave.
Mac A. Larson.
So, I mean, like, for people who might not know what your part in this show is, do you want to just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, my name is Peter New, and I play Big Macintosh on My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. Thank you. I also play some other smaller roles like Goldie Delicious, Sweet Bell's father, the doctor from the first Daring Do episode, those sorts of roles, the train conductor, various other things. I think I have something like 16 voices on the show now.
Awesome. How was it singing for Big Mac?
Super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really good. I was really excited. I mean, I knew ahead of time that it was going to happen. That's something these conventions have been really good for me, is to be able to schmooze with the writers who I don't otherwise get to meet. You know, and then they'll happily tell me things that are coming for me. So I'm very excited to find out ahead of time that I'm going to be able to do this or do that.
Yeah.
And it actually helps in terms of production because it meant that I knew the Philly Vanilli episode was coming, and I knew that I would have to hold this baseline, and I knew that I would have to sound good.
Yeah.
And so I was able to approach Daniel and say, listen, when that episode comes up, I want to work a little extra hard on it. So can you bring me in at the earliest?
Oh, cool.
You know, and I was able to come in a bit earlier. I was able to record my own demo, which just meant I got rehearsal on it, which I think really helped.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a huge amount of time to record the songs.
Well, you practice your singing at the charity auctions too. With,
Yeah, that's winging it. That's good.
So you seem to have a more expanded role this last season, season 4. You know, these 2 songs that you took part in. Do you see an even bigger role for Big Mac going forward, or is that what you're schmoozing with the writers this week?
I can only ever hope. You know, I love the opportunity to say more as an actor. Although I also quite love Big Mac as a monosyllabic wise man. So, you know, I'm content with him to not expand for that reason. But, you know, as an actor, you always want to say more stuff, sure. My favorite thing from this past season was to be able to do Goldie Delicious, because I thought that was quite a different voice for me to be able to do. And just the fact that they allowed me to do that particular thing was really entertaining for me. So I'd like to do more of that.
So more of the limb stretching, so to speak?
Yeah, limb stretching, to be able to either take an established voice in a wild new direction, or to take a wild new voice to fill that same hole.
Or to go full circle and have a massively expanded role for a huge giant fat guy?
Yeah, my very first acting job was a character on a not a very good TV show. The character name that I had to audition for was Huge Fat Delivery Man. And I booked this job. It was one of my proudest moments. Well, it was, because that was one of my first jobs. But, so, yeah. I don't think there'll be an expanded role for that character.
It's disappointing, you know, go to one of your director friends and have them come up with a magnum opus.
Magnum should have an opus.
Well, that would be an even better one.
Yeah.
And talking about other jobs, some of the other interviews that we've had, like with the writers, they've talked about how the exposure of My Little Pony and the recognition of the show has kind of helped open up other opportunities, like other gigs.
Mm-hmm.
Has that been the case for you, considering Big Mac's role is so concise?
I do think it's helped to some degree. I think it helped me to get the Littlest Pet Shop job, where my role is not concise. You know, I'm really expanded in that. I'm often 2 roles in an episode on that. So I think it helped me to get in in the audition room for that, which is great, but ultimately that's what it is for me, is I have to audition. I still have to audition for jobs on My Little Pony. So it's just that I guess that the way that the industry works where I am from in Vancouver is just a question of they just want to hear everybody and then pick the best one. And sometimes that's me and sometimes it's not. I think it's hopefully elevated me to a place where they consider me more often for the audition, but I mean, that's about it, I'm afraid. Yeah.
So they don't just throw around like a new like minor roles like around the office with the guys they already have on
Sometimes they do,
staff?
yeah. Sometimes they just throw it out. If you're already there, they'll just throw it to you. But sometimes if it's a slightly bigger role, then they'll audition for it. Yeah.
Did you have to audition for Golden Delicious, or they just like, here you go?
Because I'm Littlest Pet Shop, when I read through the script, I don't always know who's going to play what role outside of the main roles. So if there's a role that I don't recognize, I'll just read it out loud as I go through the script or prepare for Sunil, usually. And so I was in that habit, and I'm still in that habit. So as I was reading through that episode, Goldie Delicious just sort of arrived in my mouth, and there she was, just all ready to go. Little Sling Blade meets Granny Smith. So she just was there in my mouth, and when I arrived at the studio, I was just joking around and doing it. I had no sort of intention or expectation of getting it. And they heard the voice and brought me into the studio and had me do the voice and listen to it, and then decided that that would be it. So in a way I auditioned for it because they listened to it, but I don't think anybody else auditioned for it. So I think it was really just a question of them deciding, can we get away with a dude doing this? And then, yeah, I think we can.
It's interesting you see Flip more often than.
Yeah, well, I think it's an easier sale for, you know, someone like Kathy Westlock to play young male Spike the Dragon, because it's easier for a woman to kind of lower her voice and push it into a masculine place than it is for a guy to lift it and make it sound feminine. He just sounds so false most of the time, you know, trying to do that kind of stuff. Like, it's not womanly at all. It's just thin and high and strange. So, yeah, it's just the way our voices are built, I think. It's easier for women to sound like little boys.
So you seem to have caught on to this whole convention thing, and you seem to be going out to a lot of them, and you have a lot of fun with them. So, I mean, like, what started that kind of craze? Because you did start with kind of a quasi-smaller role with Big Mac. So what kind of inspired you to start going out to these cons with regularity?
I get asked to them, so if I'm available, I'll say yes. And it's mostly weekends, so I'm mostly available. And yeah, that's really all it is. There's no agenda for me. I just am happy to be here.
Do you have like recording days on Thursdays where you then have to catch a plane flight right afterwards?
That sort of thing has happened, yeah. I flew home from Animate Miami last January. I was supposed to fly home on a Sunday night, but all the planes coming out of Montreal were frozen to the ground. So the plane that was supposed to be in Fort Lauderdale when I was flying out of hadn't arrived in Toronto in time to make it to Fort Lauderdale to pick me up to take me back to Toronto to meet my flight to Vancouver. So I ended up in Toronto overnight on a Sunday night with a session at 2 o'clock on Monday afternoon in Vancouver. 3 hours different. So I had to get up at 4 in the morning or something in Toronto, get on a 6 o'clock flight, fly for 4.5 hours, get to the airport, and get home, nap for an hour, and then go to work. So that has happened, yeah. It's not ideal by any stretch.
Like survivable once or twice.
Yeah, survivable once or twice. Sort of fun in its way too, right? Like, it makes you feel like a jet setter.
It's
No, I
like
was in
those-
Miami yesterday. Today.
Sorry, I was a
Straight
special
from
guest
the plane.
somewhere.
Those
No,
stress
special-
moments, it's like you don't want to do them very often, but when you get through them, it feels like, oh yeah, that was an accomplishment.
Yeah, a little bit, you know, I find it more stressful than anything else, honestly, to not, to wake up not in the city where the session is, and then have to commute. It's stressful.
Can you call that commuting if it's flying across the country?
If, you know, I woke up and went to work.
Good thing it's a one-way commute.
Yeah, exactly, I didn't have to go back home to Toronto. Some crap hotel room by the airport. Yeah, welcome home.
So I know you mentioned, you were talking a couple times during the con about how, you have a schedule, whether or not it's going and doing autographs or coming and doing this with us or something, but have you had the chance, that one right there. Have you had the chance to kind of walk around for a bit and see stuff?
I did, I got a couple hours in the vendor hall, and I like, if I can, to walk back and forth where the people are.
Okay.
I prefer to be out where the convention is happening. Unfortunately, with this con, some of the distances are quite great. Autographs are all the way at one end, and then the next thing is all the way at the other end. And when I walk through the crowds, you can't do that quickly. You have to be prepared to stop and take pictures and shake hands and have conversations with people, which I like to do. But if I have a thing in
It makes you explore.
10 minutes, and I have to walk for 10 minutes to get there, there's the back way that I can go. So I've been mostly in the last couple of days been in the back, unfortunately. I'd rather be up the front.
Is there any kind of experience that stood out to you during this con, like in fan interaction or something like that? That was really nice.
What was the question, please?
Sorry. Is there any kind of fan experience or interaction that you had this con that really stood out to you? Or just-
This con, it's just been overwhelming. There have been so many people. This is the biggest one, obviously, and I'm quite used to cons that are 10% the size. So it's really not a question of has there been anything that stood out, but there's been so much that stood out. It's really quite fantastic. I'm always impressed by the people that have come internationally. And there are people here from Russia and Iceland and Chile, and it was just amazing to me that they would come here for this, to interact with this community, and to say hello to me is an honor.
I have a question. Well,
Yeah.
first, I might be able to give you a story. We actually, at Pop Equestria, had one of our members from Germany's Bundeswehr actually show up kind of unannounced. He doesn't speak English very much, but he had the balls to actually come to a foreign country where he doesn't really speak the language and just randomly show up here and just enjoy the convention.
Yeah.
We had to attach ourselves to him to make sure he didn't get lost somewhere in Baltimore. So.
Yeah.
But what do you think about this convention has a lot more kids in it, so did TrodCon.
Yeah, that's-
How has it been interacting with more of the kids as well?
I love to interact with the kids. I think it's great. I mean, here's the thing with kids is the kids don't necessarily understand what I do as much. A grown-up understands that there's a cartoon character, and when the cartoon character speaks, there's an actor that is saying those things into a microphone. But for a kid, it's all really literal. It's all, the red pony has the deep voice, and that's it. It's the end of the story for a kid. So I'm quite happy to talk to kids, and I'd like to engage them where they are, and if they are interested in talking to me about what my voice can do, then I will go there with them. But for the most part, I like to, just talk to them and see where they're at. They're 3, 4, and they're excited because they've just learned how to spell their name, and that's where I want to engage with them. I think that's really cool. If I can give them a thing, then whatever, that's great. And their parents are usually quite happy with that. Because I think if you start to say to a kid, hey, look what I can do. Yep, what do you think of that? I'm with Macintosh. And then I think sometimes it can really freak them out because I'm not a red pony. And the show is really real for them in a very beautiful way, and it's really made for them. And I wonder sometimes if by doing that for kids, I break it for them a little bit. And I don't want to do that. Does that make sense? So I love that the kids are here. I love to deal with the kids. But I think I'm just a guy. I'm just some dude for them.
You ever thought about getting into renting a Big Mac outfit and actually trying your voice on them?
No.
Pass on that one?
Yeah.
Good Halloween costume idea.
No.
Speaking of which,
Too hot.
what was the story of the Princess Big Mac cosplay?
Oh. Well, it goes back really to the end of season 3, when before the finale aired, online people were really getting mad at Mitch for giving Twilight wings, which really, it wasn't his idea, right? Like he wrote the episode, but he didn't pitch the episode. It was just given to him to write. So, you know, the company said, we need you to write this episode, and he went, okay, I'll give her wings. And then people were getting mad at him on Twitter, and it was before it had aired. So no, people didn't know whether it was awesome or not. They hadn't figured that out yet. And I thought this was all very funny, that people were getting angry at Mitch, who really is just a messenger in the whole thing, over a thing that hadn't happened yet. And so I started tweeting about Princess Big Mac and how Big Mac was going to be the next Alicorn princess and all this. And I had Pixel Kitties draw up a thing for, it was just before the con in Vegas, I had her draw up an autograph card for me with the Princess Big Mac on it. And I think it's quite taken off. I think people have really been enjoying Princess Big Mac, which is really cool for me. I think that's great. So then, by the time BabsCon rolled around, Candlelight Gardens had happened where Tara had come out in her Twilight Sparkle cosplay. And they asked me if I would be interested in doing this Princess Big Mac cosplay. And I said, only if Tara is there. Only if I get to come out after her, so I can see her face, and hopefully Mitch's face too. And then other than that, yes, it would be a delight. I thought how fun to be able to just wander in a faux, snooty way. That's the whole story, really.
So on the topic of fan interactions that we were just talking about, we talked to Tabitha yesterday, and she was mentioning an interesting fan interaction that she had in Finland, of all places. And is there any place that you've gone that was, what's the strangest place that you've met fans?
In the bathroom.
People follow you in?
No, I have to go sometimes. As a human being, but it's always odd to me to. People washing their hands and going, oh, hey, nice job. They'll shake my hand, it's still wet, just pee next to each other. I always find that very uncomfortable and strange. But in terms of countries or cities, I don't know. Once you get to a convention, it's just a convention center. You really could be anywhere. So it doesn't feel particularly strange. It's amazing that I've gotten to go to Galacon in Germany and Bronycon AU in Melbourne. Those have been the sort of furthest reaches. It's been incredible to have those opportunities. But once you're inside the convention, it looks like this.
You and Andrea do overlap a lot on convention attendance. Then do they usually try and synchronize the flights for
No,
convenience?
I like to arrive in a place in time for dinner, and Andrea likes to sleep in before she leaves. So we often arrive at different times.
So how, we talked a little bit about how, with a couple of the voice actors and actresses so far, but how they've worked with the people who they're working on with My Little Pony and a lot of other jobs. So do you have prior history with a lot of the other voice actors and actresses?
Yeah, I think for the most part, yeah. Before My Little Pony, I was a jobbing actor, so I would be on, I do a day on Wreck-It Rabbit, I do a day on Tom and Jerry, a day on Martha Speaks, a day on just some guest part on 100 of these things, or video games or whatever, and certainly you'd see people around at auditions. So yeah, I don't think there was anyone that was a particular stranger to me.
You kind of built up a networking group.
it's not a huge community, and it's a really supportive community, because we all understand, we all know how hard it is to get a job, and I think we all know how lucky we are to have a job. And we all know that once this job is over, that we'll be right back in the position, the person that doesn't have one in a couple of years, going, all right, maybe this time.
Lost another job to Lee Tokar. I think it's something you were saying.
Yeah, well, Lee works a lot, very talented guy. Lee Tokar.
We were talking with Rebecca. She was kind of new to actually being introduced directly to the Brony family and actually having a character basically to represent her with Sunset Shimmer. And she said that she actually kind of like fell into the character because it kind of represented her, or she kind of like took something into the character more than just the following the script and everything else. She even talked about going into the next movie, you know, there's a bit of a change in her kind of like the attitude. So, have you actually had that at all with your characters, any of them?
Yeah, I think you most of the characters that you audition for and book, it is like that, where you just, like with Big Mac, there was no time to prepare it particularly. It was one of these auditions where you arrive and there's 2 or 3 of you maybe, and you, if you get the job, you're going to stay and do it right at that moment. So you have 5 minutes. You know, here's the stuff. What do you got? And I sometimes think that's the best, because your first impulse, you know, the first time you really get to do it out loud, because, you know, there's a couple of you looking at the same stuff, and you're just in a room this big, and so you mutter it. You know, usually this. You don't want to do anything too big and too loud, because it sort of feels like it would be rude. So the first time you really do it out loud is in the room for the audition. And sometimes I think that's the best, because you can't do anything but fall into it. You just go, here's what I do with it. Boom. And so I think it really does feel that way. And then even Sunil, which I did prepare, feels that way too, even though there were 3 auditions for Sunil. It was too much this thing one time, and then they didn't have me read for it the second time, and then it was just right the third time. But you know, you're sort of given these different opportunities to try this and try that and try the other, that by the time you get to the thing that they like, it's just the thing that you just kind of go, oh, there it is. And that's, whenever you book anything, it always sort of feels like that in hindsight. Of course, more auditions feel like that than you get.
Along those lines, like you said, you're not a red pony. Compared to live action work, do you find it easier or harder as a voice actor to sort of get into the role of a character that is not human rather than a real life character in live action work? Or is it sometimes harder to embody that character in live action because when you're in front of the camera, you're yourself, you know, you can't kind of just transform completely into a red pony?
Ultimately I feel like the being a red pony aspect of playing a character has nothing to do with it, really. You don't try to make none of us are trying to make our voices sound like what if a horse was actually talking, you know? The character is built out of human character traits and just drawn to be a horse. So really what you're doing is just playing a person who is the way that my character is. And so it becomes the same kind of process as an actor. It's the same process to do that preparation as it is to do the preparation of any other role. The only significant difference, what's easier about voice acting, is that you don't have to contain yourself. On camera, you have to keep it all in the eyes and keep yourself sort of neutral somehow as you act. But in voice, you get to go, you know, you get to do whatever you want, whatever makes it sound right. So I find that easier. Sometimes I forget when I go back to camera auditions that I actually have to not make stupid faces and jump around because the camera is small. And going like this is, you know, so it's hard for a camera to pick up and contain.
How do you kind of choose what intonation you use for each yep and no? Or is that kind of in the script?
It's just in the script, yeah, whatever is in the context of the scene.
Yeah.
I try to put a little something in it that makes sense.
Do you think, you know, you were mentioning the fact that you're playing almost a human character with a lot of human characteristics and just happens to be drawn as a horse. Do you think that in both My Little Pony and a lot of the other successful cartoons like Tom and Jerry or other things like that, although you don't have a lot of voice acting, do you think that lends to the kind of appeal? It's because it's not, you're not watching horses, you're watching people who just happen to be in these particular characters. Do you think that lends to its appeal?
Well, I think, you know, sometimes little kids want to see, I mean, I guess why they draw them as animals is little kids almost always relate to animals, and they like to anthropomorphize animals. So, but you really are looking at, like, when you're talking about friendship, you're talking about honesty, loyalty, you know, these are human characteristics. Ponies don't, in real life, feel these things particularly, maybe a little, you know. But I think it's easier to take these simple lessons that are put into the show and feed them to this target demographic with bright colors and animals. I think that's why that works.
Joe, my other complete non sequitur. What was your favorite part of playing Jimmy the Doorman in Fringe?
Oh. My favorite part of Jimmy the Doorman in Fringe was holding the gaze. You know how in TV sometimes they'll finish a scene. And then they'll hold the gaze. Anna Torv, who was the lead actress in Fringe, and I were doing that scene together. She was rolling her eyes at how often they had to end a scene on a thoughtful gaze, and so the two of us would hold it as long as we could before it went. And then that happened. That was always my favorite thing. To goof off.
To see who broke down
To see
laughing
who broke
first.
down laughing first. Yeah. They'd be saying cut, we'd still be looking at each other.
I have a question. We had the chance to talk to Terry Klassen yesterday, and going off what you were saying about containment, one of the things he said, he would always try to make sure that he didn't let all the voice actors kind of go like ad-lib wherever they could, because it seemed that if you let the voice actors go ad-lib, you might actually lose control of the entire scene as everything begins to degrade. Is that
Absolutely.
something?
Yeah, that's true. You can get away with a little bit of ad-libbing here and there, and Terry will let you get away with a little bit of ad-libbing here and there, because sometimes you do have a handle on a character or on a scene that is, I don't want to say better than the writer, but that is true and functions in the scene in a way that might live better than what is on the page, or you can do with what's on the page. The best example of that, I think, in Pony is probably Granny Smith. Tabitha can wing-ding that character in a way that is perfect for the show. And so she can get away with tiny little adjustments that she can improvise. I, on the other hand, have also tried to improvise here and there, where I'm looking at my yup on the page and saying, can I just say, your sister's right, just because I think that'd be fun, you know, instead of, like, can I just say the subtext? And they always, you know, cut it and go, can we just go back to just say the words, can we get one as read? You know, because it does lose containment if you do that. If I always did that, then I wouldn't have that word. I wouldn't have yup anymore. You know, because it would just never be that anymore.
Do you also think, as part of like a continuation of that question, do you also think that if you just actually had an interaction of a conversation between two characters, that if both characters were ad-libbing kind of a little bit away from the script, it would start to just completely go haywire?
Oh, yeah, it definitely would. because if you and I want to ad-lib a scene about hay eating, where I know as the writer, or someone, whoever wrote it knows as the writer, it really just needs to lead to a lesson about how we have to share the hay. You and I start having this scene where we ad-lib hay eating. Give me that hay.
No, I don't think you deserve it.
Well, then I want the hay. I'm taking the hay.
You were gonna stop me?
No, I'm gonna take the hay and you're just gonna be stuck, eating nothing. Off I go. Have a cake.
I love cake.
You eat the cake and I'll eat the hay.
All right.
Where's our sharing? You know, like, that's what happened.
Yeah.
I know Tabitha mentioned she really enjoys jumping in and ad-libbing, especially with Granny Smith. Do
Did you
you
good?
find that you wish you had another role, maybe you've had another role where you've gotten to maybe
I got
enjoy?
I got to ad-lib many of the cat names. Because we didn't really have a moment where where she goes, well, just give me a second, and she sort of edges her way into the house and, excuse me, Poofles, and stuff, basket or whatever.
Do you find then that your background in improv, in general, kind of helps you more than some of the other actors who?
All of us are really good at improv. I think everybody in there can do it, because you have to be able to. Like ultimately, when we do Walla, which is just crowd noise really, and you can never really hear what anybody is saying, but you actually have to say real things. So if a crowd is saying, "Oh look, it's Princess Celestia," if we all just said, "Oh look, it's Princess Celestia," then that would be silly, right? So you have to go, you count to 3, and then everybody at the same time says something different that embodies the vibe of the scene. So maybe somebody will say, "Oh look, it's Princess Celestia." Somebody else will go, "Oh, the princess," and you just, and somebody else says, "Oh, I can't believe this happy day has finally come," and everybody says something different. And so there has to be an ability to improvise, because you have exactly 0 seconds to figure out what it is you want to say. Because none of that is written in the script, because none of that gets heard. But it has to be real.
That term Walla, do you end up being able to really have fun with that and the term in the background, or maybe there's a scenario in which you got to do something funny that maybe we didn't notice?
Some days it's really fun to do well. Some days it's just screaming, which is painful. It can be, but probably I don't know what's made it into the show, because I don't know. You can't really hear it, so I don't know what and you can't remember it. You've improvised it once and it's just gone from your mind 10 seconds later.
You usually try to just have fun with those?
Yeah, try to have fun. I mean, there's sort of some simple rules, right, where you don't use brand names. You can't be adult or sexual. You can't,
No vulgarity?
No swear words, no brand words. You can't say Spider-Man, Pepsi. You can't,
So none of that's really scripted. It's basically just what you can think of on.
Yes, what you can think of at the moment, but you can't, it makes sense to me that you can't do any of those things, because every now and then, if you're listening to those scenes, a word does pop through, and you can't have that word be Smarty Bart Fest,
Talk about when they're background characters in shows, they have to look like they're talking. They'll say peanut butter or whatever. Is there any Walla tricks, or is that just too boring?
I think if you really can't think of anything else to say, you might say that. But I think most of us really do try to, in that few seconds that we have to come up with something, I think we try to say something real. I mean, mostly it's like, okay, you're a townsperson and the sky is falling apart. You're in a moderate panic because you think Twilight will save you. Go. And then you, holy smokes! You just kind of open your mouth and something happens. And it's usually not that exciting. It's usually something like, holy smokes. Or, ah! Run for your lives! Twilight's here! Twilight will save us! And a lot of the time you want that too. They'll say, the story is about how Twilight will save you, and so they'll say more people need to use Twilight's name in the wall.
So you can kind of hear it come out, and they can make
Yeah.
that one a little bit louder, so you might
Yeah,
be
they
able
go,
to.
Twilight will save us. Oh, thank goodness, Twilight's here. You know.
Do you,
Look, it's Twilight.
do you prefer to do the wallas all together, or do you have to do it one at a time?
We do it as it happens in the script. We do it scene by scene. So we'll record the scene and then we'll go back and Terry will say, a lot of the time the action line will have efforts in it or laughs in it or walla in it. And so we'll go back and say, Terry will say, well, you need a line 37A, Peter, where you fall down. And then we need to get these walla lines out of the way here where the townspeople cry out for Twilight.
But, I mean, do you actually, does the voice actors as a group actually
we
all do it at the
yeah.
same time? Okay.
Yeah, usually not.
Okay.
We just count to 3. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
I think Terry mentioned there was a union thing that changed that up a bit.
There's certain, depending on the contract that you have as an actor, if you have more than a certain number of lines in the script, then you can do whatever walla is in the script. But if you have fewer than that number, then you can't do any, or they have to pay you as if you had more, which is a significant enough difference for them that they will say, okay, we're gonna do walla, everybody can do it except you. You should have to go, oh, well, I'm only saying yep today, so I can see this.
One of the things Terry was also talking about yesterday was that the hardest thing he had a time with was dealing with comedy, and that he said the key thing was that timing was not something that everybody intimately knows.
That's
and I know that
absolutely
you have a background in improv, so it's probably a little bit easier for you, but his issue was always sometimes he would actually have to manipulate the timing through editing after someone says a joke or goes through a joke in order to actually deliver it.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true, and I'm sure that's been true of me as well, because you're not just dealing with your own sense of timing, you're dealing with Terry's sense of timing, which is different. And you're dealing with Jason and Jim's sense of timing, which is different again. And you're dealing with the writer's sense of timing, which was different again. And so you have this interpretation and a reinterpretation and a reinterpretation and a reinterpretation of the joke as it goes along. When I am writing my own joke and doing it for an audience, it's very easy for me to go, hey, yep, what are they gonna do? Ha, kaboom! And then it's funny, because I know that these are the beats that I want to hit, and they'll laugh. But when you're in the space of the cartoon, I don't really know the storyboard. I don't get to look at the storyboard before we're recording it. So they have an idea of how they want the whole scene to play out. They've maybe got a visual gag in there, which is, in my mind, I've seen it written on the script, and I see it flash by, and in their heads, it's a whole beat. And that is going to change how I deliver the line that comes immediately after it. But I don't know that. And so sometimes they'll have to direct the actor to accommodate that. But it's far too boring and scientific and inorganic, if that's even a word, to say, well, you need to accommodate the extra long beat in the action line prior to like that. No one can act that, right? So then I'm sure for him it's just a question of, you gotta take that line up at the end. It's a lot easier just to say, what does the actor have to do in order to make that, here comes the horse, into here comes the horse. One of those is gonna work better than the other.
So is Terry kind of your like connector between those two things?
Absolutely, and you have to learn to trust the director, whether it's Terry or anybody else. You have to learn to trust the director. So often, I'll get a voice or a line that, for whatever reason, I'll think, that was awful, that didn't come out right at all. That even yup, sometimes I think, oh, that was the wrong one. I just can't make it come out the way that it needs to come out. And if Terry says, yep, good, I have to accept that and say, okay, it worked. Because it worked for them. And then, I'll see the show later, and there was a Cajun swamp pony in one of the episodes. I guess it was the one where she's taking the pies through the forest show. And they get to the Cajun swamp pony at the end, and they wanted me to do it, and told me ahead of time I was going to do it. And so I went on to YouTube and researched Cajun accents. And there's an English Cajun accent and a French Cajun accent. And I liked the sound of the English Cajun accent better. So that's the one that I brought to the show. And they immediately said, no, it's got to be the French Cajun accent. And I just didn't even look at it because I was so in love with the idea of doing the English Cajun accent that the Frenchman, I just kind of went into Quebecois and okay, here we are with blah, Frenchy. And I just thought, this is awful, this is so awful. It's not even a good Quebecois, it's just awful. It's right in the middle of nothing. And I thought, this just doesn't work. And the temptation is always to say, just give me another take, give me another chance. Let me look at it on my phone, let me hear it again. And we did 2 or 3 takes on it, and they were like, yeah, good. And I went, okay. And then you watch the episode, and it's fine.
So it works out when you actually do watch it.
Yeah, it's not the most, I mean, it's, in terms of my own artistry, I don't look at it and think that voice was the greatest. I don't, but I also don't look at it and think it's terrible. And I was, of course, you're worried at the end of the session, oh, that was terrible, I suck, everybody's gonna be mad at me. You know? But it's fine, and it's also, when you're doing a line in the moment, it's everything. But I mean, I don't see anybody walking around here cosplaying as Cajun Swamp Pony, right? Like, it's a beat that went by in an episode, just because it has to.
I know I did see someone do Magnum on Friday night.
I have seen Magnums, yeah, which I think is cool.
Tabitha and/or Claire, and Claire both kind of talked about how they had this years-long sort of mentor-mentee relationship. Is there anyone that either, really kind of served in either a mentor role for you, or that you feel you have kind of taken that role for them?
I don't really think so, no. I mean, everyone that has come before me is a mentor to me in a way. You know, I know Lee has been doing it longer than me, Trevor Duvall's been doing it longer, Scott McNeil's been doing it longer, Brian Drummond. All these guys have been doing it longer, and so I look up to them for sure, and I watch them work and I try to learn, and Tabitha too, and I try to learn. And then the people that are younger and have less experience and they're up and coming, they're behind me, I will always try to help. But I don't think there's never been anybody that is really just the pair of us.
Right.
Karate kidding our way into
Through the entertainment industry.
industry.
So let's talk a little bit more about this con then, and
Sure.
the stuff that happened yesterday with the charity auction. So
Cool.
I know that you've been doing a lot of different, we've seen you all over the place, whether or not that's Africa Northwest or here doing these charity auctions. So what got you started with the charity auctions? And you seem to be doing like every single one now.
I do them if I can. They sometimes can be really hard on my voice, which I don't like, but I do like that they happen, and I do like to try to contribute to them as best as I can. So I will do them at least for a little bit if I can. I got started with it, I guess, just because that's what they were doing at, I guess the first one, was at Camelot Gardens in Cleveland. And Lee and Andrew Francis and I were just in there. We just came in because we were curious about it. And there was somebody going, so I guess the next thing we have here is a glass of water here. Interested in this water. Suppose we can start the bidding at 25 cents. His name is Thirsty. $1 sold. And we just went, I think we can make this a little more fun for people. So we each grabbed a microphone and started completely goofing off and running around and just making it entertaining, feeding off each other's energy, which we do well, and cracking jokes. And
I can still
doing
hear the
voices.
pony
Pony
chant in my head
I know.
from that day.
which is great. It was a great chant.
Following up on that, what's the most bizarre item that, like, you know, you have auctioned off, you know, like Dusty Cat auctioned his watch yesterday. So,
I sold a Big Mac. I sold a hamburger for $450. And then the guy ate it.
Didn't already have a bite out of it or something?
Yeah, I took a bite out of it and then he ate it. He ate the rest of it.
Did you ever sign it?
I signed the box. He didn't want me to sign the burger. I signed a Big Mac in Texas, and then this is in Seattle. I took a bite out of it and then sold it, and he ate it. He signed the box.
Do you think that's the most expensive Big Mac ever sold?
Somebody told me that it was. Somebody told me they looked at in the Guinness Book of World Records, and in fact, there is a record in there for most expensive hamburger ever sold, and I beat it. But no one has taken the initiative to
submit it to Guinness.
send it to Guinness, but I don't care enough, so
Down the road, you'll be flipping through Guinness Book of World Records and your name will be in there.
maybe,
A
perhaps.
couple weeks from now, you get a plaque.
I hope so. So, I think that's one of the most bizarre. Somebody here on Friday, somebody asked me to sign Tabitha. Sign Tabitha.
That never happened.
No, that happened.
No, I mean, like, did you ever get assigned Tabitha?
I did sign her, yeah.
You did?
I signed her arm.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I think the guy's name was Josh or something like that. So I signed to Josh. E-up. And then her name.
That's great to hear.
I wrote it on her arm.
Did she consent, or was it like?
She did, yeah. And I warned him ahead of time. You know, he said, "I paid my money, and you'll sign anything?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Will you sign Tabitha?" I said, "I will need to ask her permission." She has the right to say no to that. But she's a sporting person. I noticed that the autograph was completely gone by the afternoon. So she took some soap to it.
Going back to charity auctions really quick, I know you've auctioned off your hats very often at conventions. I imagine you must go through a lot of hats.
I like to keep a hat for a year or two, and then when they're done, I was looking at a couple of hats that I felt like it was time to move on from, and I brought one here, and auctioned it off.
Seems like a good excuse to get new hats and it goes to a good cause.
I think so, yeah.
Appreciate it.
How do you know that a hat is at its time to leave your possession?
Well, a lot of it has to do with, I wear my hats a lot, so they get crumpled and sometimes a little stained, and like for me, I don't want to. I'm happy to be rid of something that isn't
Funky.
crisp looking. Like this hat is. I've been wearing this hat basically every day since I got it in February, and it's starting to show wear. And so, probably got another year in it.
This particular hat, you actually said earlier you were...
Well, not this hat, sorry, I thought I was wearing a different hat than the one I was wearing yesterday. This hat I got on Friday, this is from Mexico.
This particular hat, you said earlier you looked up to Scott McNeil. Would you say that influenced your choice in hat in particular?
No, well, this hat was a gift to me, so no.
Okay.
Although this is a sort of Scott McNeilish hat. This comes from Mexico, from the Brony chef, I think, who gave it to me. From Mexico.
Jumping on charity questions, what's your favorite thing you've ever sold in one of those?
Ooh. I think the bag of Cheetos probably has to be one of the best experiences ever. How much did the bag of Cheetos?
$100.
Yeah, so we sold a bag of Cheetos for $100, and this is at Carol. And we all signed right on top of each other, because I
It was
think
Drew Francis, I think, just started off like he had them to eat or whatever, and so he
So
wrote
he-
"Hey Twiley" and then signed
And then
it.
signed it, and then Lee signed right on top of Drew's signature by mistake. So then I signed right on top of Drew's signature. And then we got the bid up to it was like a bag of Cheetos. You keep giving me Cheetos every time. And part of the thing was we would help you eat the Cheetos, right? So we got it up to $100, and that was fun enough. But then when we met later in the bar, and and ate the Cheetos, and each Cheeto had to be eaten in a different manner, and we just, like, it just became this spectacle. It was really fun.
We had this like, what, 50 people or so crowded around, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. 50 people crowd around watching us eat Cheetos.
There was no room in there either.
No, it was packed.
Completely filled.
Yeah, it was packed. It was really fun.
There was like the most depressing Cheeto ever.
Yeah, eat the most depressing Cheeto.
The video I know, or at least part of the video is on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Oh, you've got one?
You know.
I'll have to get a link from you then, because the one we did fill never really made it online in good condition.
Oh dear, too bad.
What? I kept on like, when are you going to put the video up? We need to tweet it to Peter and Lee. And just 2 or 3 months later, by the time it finally went, I was like, well. The joke is, it's had its time, it's had its moment to shine already.
It may be time to bring it back.
Well, next
Put it
one
in the
about
hyperlink of this.
Hmm?
Put it in like the description of this on YouTube.
I feel like Cheetos.
Is there any charity auction items that you've ever looked at and gone, man, I would really want to bid on this?
Yeah, there have been some things. But I don't have that kind of money. Some of the things that I wanted, the things that are all going for, $2,000, $3,000.
I'm totally with you there.
I'm amazed that they go for that money, and I love that they go for that money. But it's it's
plushies and the massively autographed prints and the super unique art things.
Yeah, super unique art things are the things for me.
Do you like Silver Slinger's work? He often
Oh,
shows
yeah.
up in charity auctions.
Yeah.
We love Silver Slinger. Such a good contributor.
Yeah, he's a nice guy too. Yes, sir.
What other cons are you hitting up this year? if any?
What's been announced? I think,
Nightmare Nights Dallas?
no, I'm not Nightmare Nights this year. I'm going to Austin, Texas. What's that?
Brony Fanfare.
Brony Fanfare, that's what it's called. Thank you. Brony Fanfare in Austin. And then I believe I've been announced for Milwaukee in November, which is the Ponyville Cider Fest, I think it's called. I think that's it for this year.
My little pony, my little pony. Ah, my little pony. I used to wonder what friendship could be. My little pony. Until you all shared its magic with me. Big adventure.